Hello everyone and welcome to today's video, which is my September wrap-up. So first thing I'm going to address is the lighting. My power is out. The only light I have in my room is that candle back there. And the only light I can use for this video is natural lighting. But it's been out for like 24 hours. Hasn't come on yet. I needed to film this video and I can't just sit around all day doing nothing. I'm going to utilize this time. I read 6 books in the month of September, and I read a little less this month because I went back to school and I've been starting college jobs, so I'm really busy right now. I still got some reading in, still read some really good books. Let's just get into those. The first book I read this month was Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. I'm pretty sure everyone knows this play, so I'm not going to give a synopsis, but I read it for a video. But I gave this 3 stars. I genuinely enjoy reading plays and reading Shakespeare, but it's really hard because I like talking to people about it as I read it to help comprehend. I was supposed to read this my freshman year of high school, second semester in my English class. Because of COVID, it got canceled, so I never got to read this book, and I felt like I should definitely not graduate high school without reading Romeo and Juliet. I just felt like that was wrong, so I read it on my own, and I think I would have had way more fun if I read it in class, but unfortunately not having anyone to talk to about it was kind of depressing. I still enjoyed it. It was fun. I'm glad I read it. It's a staple. Next, I had a reread, which was A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I read this first one maybe last year or earlier this year, but I wanted to read the second one, and I had the audiobook for this first one, so I wanted to review it, so I reread it physically and with the audiobook. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. The series is really good, but I'm trying to be harsher on my ratings of series because I feel like I just willy-nilly throw 4 stars at everything, even though maybe I didn't enjoy it as some of my other 4-star reads, so I'm trying to get a little bit harsher with my ratings. So I rated this a 3-star. This is about Delilah Bard and Kel. Kel is something called an Antari, and he's a magician. He's magic. And Delilah Bard is a thief. And they come from 2 different Londons. In this world, there are 4 different Londons. There's Red London, Grey London, White London, and Black London. Kel comes from Red London, where magic is abundant, and Lila comes from Grey London, which is very much like the London we know in this world, but kind of in the era of industrialization, I guess. There is no magic in that world, and Kel, since he's an Antari, can travel between the 4 different Londons, kind of as a messenger. He encounters Delilah Bard, and they end up having to go on this adventure to save the Londons. It has a subplot of romance, very slow burn, like barely any in this first book, more in the second. It was very fun, a good fantasy series for fall I very much recommend. Next, I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Mosfei, or Moshfei. I don't know how you pronounce her last name, but this book was very much out of my comfort zone as well. It's a literary fiction, and it's about, I completely forget her name, but basically this girl who graduated from Columbia, and she is like majorly mentally ill. There's a lot of drugs in this book, so I would look up trigger warnings if you need to, but this is about this girl who decides that she wants a year of rest to reset so she'll wake up a new person. So she finds this psychiatrist who is very sketchy, to say the least, and so she goes to Dr. Tuttle and tells her all these lies about how she just can't sleep. So Dr. Tuttle prescribes her a bunch of sleeping pills to help her sleep. So she gets all these prescriptions and she tries to sleep for a whole year. Now, this book is very weird. There's no high point. There's no climax in the book. It's very much her life, very monotone, exactly what's happening, exactly what she's thinking throughout every day of this year, and it's something that I've never read before, so it's very hard to describe. I gave this book 4 stars. It was something that held my attention. I wasn't ever bored when I was reading this book, but I also wasn't ever exhilarated. I was itching to pick up the book, but I wasn't like some books, like I squeal and like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to read it. This wasn't that book. I was very driven to pick it up, but I was never exhilarated and really excited while reading. It was, again, a very monotonous, monotone book. That being said, I never ever got bored. So it's very hard to describe. I definitely recommend it. It was very hard to read and was very bizarre, and that's all I can say about it. Then I have another reread, which is Acotar, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the series, and I rated it 5 stars. This is one of my all-time favorite fantasy series ever, and I got these new covers recently. I had the old ones, but then I wanted to get the new ones so I could have the matching set with the newest book that came out. So I got the new ones, and I went through and I was like, I need to annotate these because I've never annotated them before. I went through and reread and annotated Acotar. I used the audiobook, annotated as I went, so now I can flip through and see all my deranged commentary on this book. And if you haven't heard of Acotar before, it's kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's a fantasy book. It's about this girl named Feyre, and she is a human, and one day she's out hunting and shoots this wolf. Well, it actually wasn't a wolf, it was a fae. Another fae comes to take her to Prithian, which is where all the fae live, because she violated the treaty by killing this fae. So she's taken and she is kept basically prisoner. It's a Beauty and the Beast telling. You can probably assume where it goes from there. But if you haven't read this or haven't heard of it, I very much recommend. It's a super fun series. The books are just continually coming out. Sarah J. Maas is a super fun author to read. It's not something that it's a very easy fantasy series to read because it has a heavy subplot of romance. So if you've never read fantasy before, I highly recommend the series. Then next I had A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the Darkest Shade of Magic series. I had my reread of A Darkest Shade of Magic, and then I headed on to A Gathering of Shadows. I was reading A Gathering of Shadows and Acotar kind of at the same time, one I was reading at school and one I was reading at home. I'm not going to give you a synopsis for this one because it is the second book in a series, so I don't want to spoil anything, but it again follows Delilah Bard and Cal as they adventure through the Londons. And I also rated this 3 stars. Like I said, I'm trying to be a little harsher with my ratings. This is a very, very good fantasy series to read. I recommend. So a plot of romance, a little bit more in this book than there was in the first one. I would honestly give this one probably more of a 3.5 than just a 3. And then the last book I read this month was Akramoth, or A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This was also a reread, obviously. Rated it 5 stars again. It's one of my 5-star series, and I also annotated this book as well. This is my favorite in the series, so I had a really good time rereading it. I can't even explain how happy reading these books makes me. I, again, can't give you a synopsis. It's the second book in a series, but if you've never read Acotar, I highly recommend. It's a great fantasy series to read, and really easy because of the subplot of romance. So those are all the books I read in the month of September. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you also had an amazing reading month. Even though I didn't read as much as I normally do, that's totally fine. I had a great month. I read a lot of my favorites, and that was really fun. Bye.